and Personnel Committee meeting this evening. I'm Trustee Janet Fraser. I'm chairing this meeting and I'd like to call the meeting to order. I'd like to start with the Indigenous land acknowledgement, and with deep gratitude and respect, we are honoured to be learning and unlearning on the ancestral and unceded lands of the Hamasquiam, Squamish, Okameo, and Tsleil-Waututh. And I had the honour to attend the Indigenous Veterans Day, Indigenous Remembrance Day ceremony this weekend, and I see that we have information in our foyer about that day. So I think that this is a part of our learning and unlearning as we think about truth and move towards reconciliation. This meeting is currently being broadcasted live, and both the audio and video recordings will be accessible to the public for viewing even after the meeting ends. Footage from this meeting may be viewed from Canada or anywhere else in the world. And the board has a strong commitment to ethical conduct. This includes the responsibility of all participants to conduct themselves with appropriate decorum and professionalism. And as chair, I have the bulk of the responsibility to see that decorum is maintained. After each presentation, there'll be an opportunity to ask questions for clarification, and please keep questions and comments to the items before us. Before I begin, I will ask all participants to introduce themselves, starting with Alfred.
Alfred Chen, trustee.
Trustee Victoria Young, and alternate today on the committee.
Trustee Christopher Richardson, not a member of the committee.
Trustee Susie Ma.
Floyd Tuting, VDSC.
Dana Awida, VETFA.
Denise Clark, VASA.
Jody Polikoshko, Vancouver Elementary and Adult Educators.
Tyson Schmier, PASA.
Carl Janzi, Vancouver Secondary Teachers Association.
Suzette Magri, QP15.
David Schaub, Vancouver DPAC.
Trustee Reddy, pronoun she, her, and on the committee for tonight.
Laura Lee Russell, Executive Director of Finance.
Flavia Coughlin, Secretary, Treasurer, and CFO.
Patricia McNeil, Director of Communications.
Allison Ogden, pronouns she, her, Associate Superintendent.
Trish Woods, Manager of Food Services.
Manuel Humbert, Manager of Purchasing and Administrative Services.
Good evening, everybody. Michael Gray, Executive Director, Employee Services.
Cherry Mack, Supervisor of Accounting and Financial Reporting.
Paul Rosberg, Manager of Financial Planning and Analysis.
Right, thank you, everyone. And this evening we have two items for approval. And I will ask Executive Director of Finance, Laura Lee Russell, to present item 1.1, the Statement of Financial Information.
Thank you. In accordance with, actually, could we go to the next slide? Thanks. With Section 2.3 of the Financial Information Act, a school district must, within 6 months after the end of each fiscal year, prepare a statement of financial information for the fiscal year. The financial statements contained in the SOFI report have been prepared by management in accordance with the accounting requirements of the British Columbia Treasury Board regulations and as directed in Section 23 of the Budget Transparency and Accountability Act of British Columbia. Contained on the screen, you have the list of schedules that are included in the SOFI, and it's 138 pages in your package. So at this time, we will open it to questions.
Thank you, Laura Lee. And are there any questions on SOFI? Jody, if you'd like to go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. I have a few questions, so I don't need to do them all if you wanted to vary the speaking order. I just had a question about, there's a whole bunch of individuals at the end in the payees. And I'm wondering, are those folks who are named there, are they contractors? And whether or not they're included in the other professionals categories throughout the rest of the statement.
So just to confirm, are you saying the names that are listed from page 110 of this report onwards?
Let me just pull it up. Yes. Thank you.
So the names are included in the list of suppliers?
Yes, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 individuals who received payment. And I'm just wondering if those are like contractors, what they did, and whether or not they were included in the other professionals category.
Okay. So I think we're just taking a minute to look through the report. Flavia?
If you could give us a name, we can ascertain whether or not that is the case.
Sure. So there's Yamrong Chen, Yi Huang, Destin Lord, Gordon McLeod, Suntari Tudorakpal, Ingrid Sulston, Victor Morris, and Fengsha Wang.
So, based on the names that you've noted, it sounds like they would be consultants, so they are not reported under other professionals, but under services and supplies on the financial statements.
Follow-up, Jody?
Yeah, thank you. How would we find out more about what services they provided? Like some of them I can look it up and see that that's a locksmith, so it's clear what that's for, but I can't really find out what these folks did for the employer.
So that information is not required to be disclosed under the statement of financial information, as such is not included in the package tonight.
Another follow-up?
Another question.
Okay.
Okay. I noted that there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 sort of luxury hotels that were paid in here. The Fairmont Hotel, the Executive Suites, Pan Pacific Vancouver, the Strathcona Lodge, Westin Bayshore, Westin Resort and Spa, Whistler Blackcomb Resort. I'm wondering what those amounts were, what we're paying for with those.
Okay, thank you. Flavia?
Usually the largest amounts that you see related to hotels are for grads.
Is there anyone, sorry, I just need to see if there's anyone else with questions on this. I'll go to Carl and then I'll come back to you, Jody, or come back after everyone's had a chance. Carl, if you'd like to go ahead.
Yep, thank you. So I'm also looking on the list of payees here. I'm looking at Universus Systems, which the VSB paid, I believe it's $160,000 to last year. Now, my understanding is Universus System is either the new name of or the parent company of Beauregard Systems. So, traditionally we paid $30,000 a year to Beauregard for their projections. We're now up to $160,000. And given the fact that in conversations we had around the opening of the school year this year and the inconsistencies with projections and the inability of the district to actually have a school year that started without actually with closures of classes, is there a particular reason, to the point where it's actually communicated that roughly 10%, there's a 10% flex in how much they understand between June and September? Why we pay $160,000 to Baragar Systems obviously for data that is not actually useful, given the fact that we can't start the year off with a balanced educational, with the right number of classes to meet the kids we've got. So that's my question. Why do we spend the money on something that doesn't do us any good, apparently?
Flavia?
Any estimate or projection system is not perfect. It is estimates that they provide us. And as you know, this past year has been truly unprecedented in terms of changes that have been implemented by the federal government to restrict immigration into Canada. Yes, the projections were not perfect, but given the continuous change, even last week when the federal government tabled their budget, they announced additional measures to limit immigration into Canada. It is hard for any software that is built on historical data to accurately predict what the impact of new policies will be. And we continue to work with Baragar to refine that projection model to ensure that as much as we can, we get closer to actual numbers for future years.
Carl, a follow-up?
Yes, thank you. So that's the thing that I'm trying to reconcile. I mean, we're looking at closing classrooms or selling buildings or, cleaving off fields based on theoretically a 30-year projection of what the class sizes will be individually by grade at every one of our elementary schools or secondary schools. And yet that same data can't be used to predict next school year. I really do find it questionable to be putting money into a system that, on the one hand, we're saying that, it's too difficult to predict what's going to happen. And yet, on the other hand, we're supposed to be making decisions 10 years down the road with this data. So again, my question is, how do we reconcile the fact that it seems we're using the same data when it's not useful in the short term, but it's supposed to be effective in the long term? I'm curious as to how that squares.
I think the question's getting a little far away from the information in the Sophie report, but Flavia, if you have a comment to make.
I will just note that the enrollment projections that were shared at the Facilities and Planning Committee meeting in June of 2025 are not solely based on Baragar. They are including local information regarding development. We've used multiple sources of data to create projections that are not pure Baragar. And in that report, which is very detailed, you will note that we're not recommending that Baragar be used for decision-making long-term. Instead, there are two other sets of projections that are being recommended, and those are being relied upon, not the Baragar data.
Okay, another follow-up on this point?
So I guess that's the question is, are we going to continue to pay Baragar for data that doesn't do us any good? That's my financial question. They're in the list of pays, and it's 5 times what we paid them last year.
Flavia?
For now, we do have a contract with Baragar for this year, and we will continue to evaluate the value of that service that they provide us.
Jennifer?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, just a question and a comment. One is that, I think Universus/Baragar does pose some challenges, especially being a closed private data set, and we've raised that before. So it's good to know sort of if the costs are going up and the accuracy remains to be kind of a question, that maybe we can look into some alternatives. My question is just about page 37 of 148. It's a line related to Harris & Co. So for legal services, I believe it's about 9.3 million. And it says that it's unfunded costs, which is clear. But then later in the same report, it says that it doesn't have a material impact. So if we could just get some discussion on how doesn't it have a material impact for finances?
So you said the item is on page 37.
There is no such item on page 37. Maybe it's a different page.
So I can just double check my page here, but at the same time, there are unfunded costs related to Harris & Co. And then we say that they don't have a material effect on our finances. So I'm just wondering, how is that?
Maybe if you could check the page number, and then
Sure.
then staff will know which particular piece you're referring to. And I'll go, I'll ask if there's anyone else who hasn't asked a question yet who'd like to. Susie, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm looking at page 21 of 148 and also looking at page 29 of 148. So those are the two pages. And so I'm looking under on agenda package page 29 of 148, underneath the line item that says portfolio investments. Does everybody know? Has everybody found it? Yes? So there's a line item that says 50 million there for 2024. And when you look at those line items there, and then when you go back and look at agenda package page 21 under investing transactions, those don't match up. I don't know why the numbers don't.
Flavia?
So these are the financial statements that you're referring to, which have been already reviewed and approved by the board on October 1. I believe that you're comparing accumulated surplus with cash investments. You're looking at the note 14, accumulated surplus, and comparing that to how much cash we have invested in the year. Is that correct?
No, what I'm looking at is underneath portfolio investments on agenda package 29 of 148, under the year June 30th, 2024, it lists a set of numbers. Mm-hmm. And then when you go to the page 21 of 148, under 2024, those numbers are different.
I think maybe that's something staff should take away, because it's in the audited financial statements and not in the SOFI report. And so that's not part of what we're approving tonight. As Flavia said, the audited financial statements have already been approved for last year.
But I thought we were asking questions, Chair, under this item. That's why I'm asking the question.
Okay. Okay, go ahead, Flavia.
So the numbers that, so you're looking at the bottom of the cash flow statement, I believe, which shows all the cash that the VSB has, and you're comparing that to the cash that is invested. Where you should look, so this note 4 relates to page 18 of 148 under financial assets. There is a category called portfolio investments. That's where note 4 is referenced, and that's where you're going to see the same numbers.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Susie. Any other questions before I go back to Jody? Okay, Jody, if you'd like to go ahead. Oh, Jennifer, sorry, Jennifer, did you find your page number? Not yet. Okay, I'll go to Jody.
Thanks. I just have a follow-up on the hotels. I understand that there's some grad ceremonies that are held there, but some of these are quite far out of town. And so I'm wondering what those would be for. And some of them are significant, like $285,000, $224,000. And I'm also wondering, because the financial statements come at one time, the SOFI comes at another time, and then we talk about budget at a third time, and it doesn't seem like we get a chance to overlap them. I'm wondering if someone could let me know where the reimbursement for that would come. Like, I know that students pay for graduation ceremonies to attend, and so presumably there's some revenue that's also attached to these expenditures, and I'm wondering where I might find that.
Flavia?
If you bear me for 1 minute, I can point you to the page number. It's under the financial statements in the special purpose funds. And what is the exact page number? Okay, what page? Sorry. Oh, it's page 50 of 148. That's the column titled School Generated Funds. So that's part of the funds that are raised at the school level. And there are also some of the funds that are deemed operating, and those unfortunately are reported as a lump sum under other revenue for operating. If you look at the financial statement discussion and analysis, which was presented back in September, you're going to see a breakdown of revenue and expense at the school level.
Jody, a follow-up?
No, a separate question.
Okay.
Sort of following on the lines of that, I also noted that there were about probably just over $1 million in travel tour organizers, and that's MYK, STS, Ellison, Uniglobe. And I'm wondering if you can tell me what those travel tours were for.
So those would be field trips organized at the school level.
And would the contributions from families or other fees funds also come under the lump sum that you were speaking about earlier?
Correct.
And so those would all be, we'd expect to see a comparable amount for both the hotels, including the spa and resorts out of town, and also the travel tours?
So anything that's related to grads or field trips, there would be corresponding revenue net of any hardship fees that have been waived.
Okay. I have a question actually about the hardship fees. Can I ask that? I am hearing from teachers that they're finding challenges that the schools are no longer being funded for the hardship funds for field trips. That the money that used to be available to support and supplement that is no longer available or not a line item any longer. I'm wondering if someone could answer that for me, and I recognize I'm a little off topic here.
I'm not sure we have the right people here at this meeting, but Flavia, would you like to speak to that?
I'm just guessing because I don't have the information that you have from teachers. The only fund that is no longer available is a provincial grant for the student and family affordability. It was called the Student and Family Affordability Fund, and that is no longer provided by the province. So those funds are not available to the VSB and not available at the school level anymore.
I'm going to go to Jennifer. You have your question.
Yeah, I'm just going to try to ask this again. So on page 37 on the bottom, there is a unfunded litigation cost in the amount of 9.3 million. And then in the paragraph following, so section 17, it states that there's no material impact on these legal costs. So I'm just wondering, how is it that those unfunded legal fees of 9.3 million don't have a material impact? Kind of what backup or support would we have to cover those? And then to state that they don't have a material impact.
So I think the question is around the auditor's definition of what material impact is.
So I believe you're referring to note 17 to the financial statements. And the note 17 talks in general terms about other legal proceedings that have been brought against the VSB, which are deemed not to have a material impact. The claim that was brought against the VSB by the Conseil Scolaire Francophone has its own separate note disclosure, so that the public and the board can see specifically what that potential impact of the litigation is, and that's why you see that disclosure of the amount separate. So the two matters are different. There are a number of other minor litigation items that occur on a regular basis and don't have a material impact on the VSB.
Jennifer?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just to follow up, thank you so much for that clarification. That helps me. The second part then is there a place where we can see all legal costs, like those that are associated with CSF, but then others, as you mentioned, sort of like general legal proceedings?
We'll just wait while we go through, staff are going through the document.
So there isn't a separate line item for legal fees in the financial statements. They would be disclosed under the services line. In the statement of financial information, there would be disclosure of total fees paid to legal firms that the VSB engages.
Okay, thank you, Jennifer. Jody, do you have more? Okay, go ahead.
I do, and it's connected to Trustee Reddy's question. I looked in the payees in the SOFI and found that there were 6 law firms that were paid for an additional several $100,000. And so I'm wondering, are all of those, including the $9 million for Harrison Company, are those funded by the district above and beyond what I understand to be part of like the collective legal fund that school districts have access to, or are those reported somewhere else? Thank you.
Flavia?
So payments to law firms that you would see disclosed on our statement of financial information would be covered from district funds, be those operating or local capital, depending on the nature of the advice and or litigation that is funded.
And I think there was a question about I think part of the question was about the province, or there's a mechanism through the province to fund some legal costs, I think through the School Protection Service. Is that the second part of the question?
Yeah, and so I guess I'm just wondering how much else was there that was funded through that other piece, and where would that be recorded?
So we do pay fees for the school protections program. The actual payments made on behalf of VSB under school protections program are not disclosed. And those are held just with like any other insurance plan. It's experience in the plan. Same, we have payments made to BCPC for another joint litigation fund, and those specific expenses again are not recorded by VSB, but because it's a managed pool of legal fees that is managed by BCPC.
Everything done?
No, I've got one more.
Oh, okay, last one.
Thanks. These were questions that came also from the same part. There were quite a few places where I saw really high numbers of payees to the provincial government. And I'm not talking about like sort of like taxes and stuff, but we saw that we see in there's like a $2.5 million payment to the Minister of Finance. Payments made to all of the health authorities, so not just Coastal Health, but also Island, Coast, Central, Northern, like in the realm of about 150,000 or 300,000 each. And then the Receiver General of Canada, 142 million. Now, I think the last one probably has to do with taxes, but I'm just wondering why we're paying so much to the government when we're also receiving core funding from them.
Is that a philosophical question or a?
No, it's a real question. Like, why are we paying the Minister of Finance $2.5 million?
Okay.
And what is that, which part of that, where else can I find that in the statement, the financial statement? Like, one of the things, if I could just sort of explain my rationale here, one of the things that I find really challenging about this budget is that the numbers don't add up. So there isn't like this is how much we spent and this is how much we got. Those things are very hard to find in this document. And so what I'm always looking for is, the example is the hotel rooms, right? So the hotel rooms are over here in the payees, and then they're called something else in another section where the money comes in. And so for someone who's not on the inside, it's near impossible to decode this. And so when I see really large amounts of money being paid to the government, especially to like Northern Health and Interior Health, I wonder what that's for, and I can't find the corresponding piece in the statement. So I'm just looking for some help.
Flavia, if you could address the payments to other governments and organizations.
First, the format of the Statement of Financial Information is mandated by the provincial government, and we are preparing it in accordance with the instructions that are given to us by the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Education and Childcare. And this is not meant to be a budget document or a document that reconciles financial statements to other sources of information, but it is an additional disclosure that is required by the province. The payments that we make to different levels of government relate to taxes that are collected and then remitted to government, so to the provincial government Minister of Finance. We would, for example, one of the taxes remitted would be the PSD. For Receiver General income taxes that we collect from employees, we remit them to Receiver General of Canada. And there are also the employer health taxes. There are a number of different taxes that we collect and then remit to various provincial government organizations.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any final questions on this item? Oh, so Carl and then Jennifer.
Thank you. Just have one that's, I've been trying to figure out since the last time I looked at a document similar to this, and it is back around the GICs that we have. So that's in the notes, but I'm looking on page 54 of 148. It is Schedule 4 unaudited at the investment income line. And I'm trying to figure out, is that investment income then what we got from the investment of that $30 million GIC? Just so that's the first question, do these things go together fundamentally? Or this investment income is not related to that GIC?
Part of the investment income reported relates to the GIC, but the majority of that investment income actually relates to the cash that we have with the Bank of Montreal, just in our regular bank account, which at times earns higher interest rates than the GICs that we are able to secure through our banking institutions.
Follow up, Carl?
Yes, thank you. So we have our own building, the VSTA. So we kind of, in a general sense, I've been doing this GICs cash sort of thing ourselves. And it's the thing that we've been trying to figure out ourselves is how do we work with this? And so, looking at maintaining a budget that or a cash flow that allows us to do the job that we need to do. So I guess the question I was going to say was, the $30 million GIC is what, roughly 5% of our operating fund? Yeah, so I'm just curious if, what impact it had of locking up that $30 million over a period of time had on our budget overall, or well, not even our budget, on our ability to do the work of the district. And if that is a practice that's going to be repeated in the future, just simply because that is a significant chunk. Yes, I'll stop the question there.
Cash and how we manage cash does not impact our ability to budget or spend funds. We do have significant amounts of cash on hand that far exceed our operational needs, and that's what enables us to have significant investments that are locked in even for longer periods of time. If you looked at the statement of cash flow, we have over $200 million of cash, but that's not money that can be spent over and above what we have budgeted every year. There's in the financial statement discussion and analysis, there's a separate schedule that explains how that cash has been arrived at and what it's earmarked for.
Okay. Jennifer, would you like to go ahead?
Yeah, I just had a final question here, and that was about the unrestricted capital surplus. So page 37 again. There is a line there for 37 million. There's some that's restricted capital and then some that's unrestricted. I'm just wondering why there's sort of that 25 million invested in local capital. So could you just explain what that means? 25 million invested in local capital, and is it available to use or is it invested for some extended period of time?
So this is really accountant speak. Invested in capital assets, it's essentially what the balance of the capital fund is. There's no money available to be spent. This is a net of amortization expense and amortization revenue over time. The 25 million, it's purely an accounting entry. There's no cash there and no ability to spend that money on anything. No, it's not invested. It is. This is the language that's provided to us by provincial government. I would not call it that. In for-profit financial statements, this would be retained earnings.
Right, I think that's all the questions for this item. So what I'll do is I'll look to the members of the Finance and Personnel Committee on whether they would like to recommend the motion. If we can just have the motion up, that the board approve the statement of financial information for the fiscal year ended June 2025. So I'll look to Alfred, yes. Victoria, yes. Jennifer, yes. And myself, yes. So it will go to the board with the recommendation of the committee. And next up, we have the approval. The next item for consideration is the 2026-2027 financial planning process. And I'll ask Flavia to present on this item.
Thank you. Next slide, please. The preparation of the annual budget is required by the Ministry of Education and Childcare in the form and with the information that is prescribed by the minister. Our school district, like any other district in the province, will be required to prepare a balanced budget by June 30th of next year. Next slide, please. The adoption of a budget must be done by bylaw, and the board may amend the annual budget bylaw, and it's mandated to do so when the minister announces changes to operating grants. And usually we see that happening every December, and then we are given 60 days from the order of the minister to prepare an amended budget, which then would be due back to the ministry by the end of February. Next slide, please. Also, the Ministry of Education and Childcare expects that our financial planning is aligned with the provincial planning framework, and that is the two policies, the Framework for Enhancing Student Learning policy and the Financial Planning and Reporting policy. As you know, the school district has prepared a Framework for Enhancing Student Learning report and has submitted that to government by October 1 this year. And we will now have to engage in a process where we align our annual operational plans and financial plans to prepare the financial plan for next year. Next slide, please. And we continue to have a legislative requirement to prepare a balanced budget. This means that our expenses cannot exceed the revenue available plus any surplus that may be carried forward from current year to future year to help balance the budget. Next slide, please. This slide depicts our financial plan development cycle. And we start with the education plans and the framework of enhancing student learning, school plans, operational plans, and then development of the financial plans that ensure alignment of financial resources with all these other plans that establish priorities for the school district. And then we go to implement and the reflect and review. It's what we just did through financial statements and our statement of financial information, which show what was done in the year and how the money was spent. Next slide, please. And in the development of our budget estimates, we will start with the 25-26 amended annual budget. And when developing the plan for future years, our goal is to maintain comparable level of programs and services to the current year. And the steps for development are outlined on this slide. In early February, we will be presenting the 3-year enrollment projections, and those must be submitted to the Ministry of Education by February 15th. We will then develop a base budget, which looks at continuing the same level of services and programs into future years as we had in the current year. We would look at a balanced status quo budget, apply any structural deficit reduction strategies that may be applicable, and then look at initiatives that support the education plan goals, operational goals, and school plan goals, and how those may be funded within available funds. Next slide, please. And I will pass it over to Patricia.
Thank you. Through the chair. As part of the financial planning process, we obviously have a period of engagement where we actively seek feedback from inherent rights holders, formal stakeholder groups, students, their parents, members of the public. This is a fairly fluid process, and if we go to the next slide, please. I believe this is on page 134 of your agenda package. Here we have the proposed financial plan engagement timeline. For the purposes of highlighting, I draw your attention to the details in green, which outline that our public engagement process begins in January, with a few of the details already plotted out for that month, and it will extend to mid-April.
Right, that's the end of the presentation? Yes? Okay, thank you. So are there any questions? Carl, go ahead.
I'm just curious, in the stakeholder engagement period, who will be engaging with us this year, as both the people who engaged with us last year have left the district? So who will be talking to this year?
Flavia?
There will be staff from my office, likely Laurie Russell, and we will also look at having an educator from the leadership team present at those meetings.
Jody?
Thanks. This sort of question harkens back to the question that I raised earlier about how all the documents seem to be siloed in temporally. So we have the financial statements, then we have the SOFI. Then it looks like there's in February, which I think you were just speaking to, Patricia, is the budget, the amended annual budget. And then later there's the financial plan. And never the twain shall meet. So I guess I'm just wondering, like, how does this make sense to a stakeholder group or to members of the public who are looking to sort of see the way that the year before influences the way that we budget for the year, and then how that rolls out into plans. And I guess I'm asking that as a stakeholder because it's not clear to me. Thank you.
So the financial planning process is actually quite sequential. And what's important to keep in mind is what fiscal year you're looking at any given moment. So the documents that we've just presented up to this point conclude the financial planning and reporting for the fiscal year ended June 30th, 2025. And now we're looking forward. So this particular document is looking at how we are going to build the financial plan for 2026-27. So the first step always for us is to solidify the current year budget. So that's what the amended budget is about. So the amended budget that we prepare in February looks at the actual enrollment that we had in the current year, and the actual grants that we will receive from provincial government based on that enrollment, the actual staffing levels that we have in the current year, and also actual levels of expenses that are expected in the current year. When we prepare our forward-looking financial plans, we have to make a number of estimates and assumptions because not all the information is available to us. Quite often we see that taxes such as EI, CPP, or WorkSafe, those are not communicated at the time when we prepare budgets, but come in later. And we capture those changes to estimates in our amended budget. So then, once we complete the amended budget, we use that as our most reliable source for developing our future year plans. And the first thing that we need to look at is, from a financial estimates perspective, is how many students do we think are going to attend our schools over the next 3 years. And that's why the first step in the preparation of the next cycle of financial plans is the determination of the 3-year enrollment, which we present publicly February 15th. Those enrollment numbers are submitted to government, and government then responds to us with estimated operating grants, and those estimated operating grants are announced on March 15th. When we table a proposed preliminary budget or financial plan for the next year, we would disclose all the assumptions that were made that varied the amended budget and transformed it into what the financial plan is. So you can see that continuity between the different plans that are being tabled. And then with the financial statements, we close the cycle. That's where we show how the money was actually spent. So those are now no longer estimates, but what happened during the year. So those are retrospective, and share with the board and the public how the funds had to be used and the real revenue that was received during the year.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. I think the sort of it's quite sequential might be to someone who's experienced in this area, but I think it's quite a lot of information for folks who are trying to access this and figure out what it actually means for frontline workers, what it means for kids in classrooms. And that's the part I think that makes this kind of timeline and the specific use of those different language hard for stakeholders to access. And so I want to just sort of go back to some of the statements that were in the presentation, if I may, about the comparable maintenance of comparable services to the previous year and the balanced status quo budget. And I want to just say that in our experience as teachers, there has not been a maintenance or a comparable level of services. There hasn't been a balanced status quo budget. What we're seeing is less and less and less. and more needs in the classrooms. And so to us, when you say we're going to shut down programs for students with disabilities and that the comparable support won't be put into classrooms, that's not status quo. That's not a comparable level of services to the year before. So when I'm considering the sort of premises in this process, knowing that I don't trust the premise, it makes it hard to participate. So what I'm asking, I guess my question is, similar to Carl's question earlier, when you have flawed data about enrollment or about the needs of students, where in this process is there an opportunity to reevaluate and say, we're not doing good enough, we need to do better, we need to be putting more supports into schools, we need to be better supporting kids with disabilities? Where is that place?
Flavia?
As you know, our financial resources are limited, so we do attempt every year to maintain services. However, we are highly dependent on the funds that are given to us by the provincial government, and also the other side is the expenses that we have to cover. Majority of our expenses are really not expenses that the board can control. They're either determined by collective agreements or by taxation measures that are imposed by provincial or federal government. In terms of how stakeholders will be engaged, like this is where we will start the engagement in January, and we invite all of you to share with us your priorities, and we will attempt our best to reflect those priorities in our financial plans, keeping in mind our limited financial resources, and we truly don't know what next year's budget is going to look like from a provincial perspective.
And maybe what I can add from the trustees' point of view is that we do have the advocacy committee, and we've been having discussions there about various things, and a lot of it comes down to ministry funding and how we can present our case to the ministry that we need, we as a board are not happy with the funding that we're getting, and we want to be able to do more as well.
Is it okay if I have a follow-up?
Yes, and then I'll go to Carl and David.
Thanks. Yeah, I think everyone here understands that the budget process is zero sum, right? Like that there's a certain amount of money and we have to do best by the kids with that money. And I guess what I want to just say is that there's a series of choices, and I'm speaking to the trustees here, there's a series of choices that you will make at every turn. And what we're asking you to do is put the kids at the center. And whenever there's a choice, to make the decision that the funding needs to be as close to the kids as possible. And you have lots of choices. And so when you're thinking status quo, when you're thinking consistent services, please make sure to listen to the voice of stakeholders, because we see what's happening and it's not okay.
Thank you, Jody. And Carl?
Thank you. Yes, somewhat following up on what Jody said, because I'm actually just reading the conclusion on page 135 of 148, where it actually says, goal 2 of the ED plan is to address increasing equity through improving stewardship of the district's resources through effectiveness, efficiency, and sustainability. That very frequently efficiency and effectiveness are two non-overlapping items. There may be times when you get both, but it's not infrequent that you have to sacrifice one for the other. The one we would, well, you know what we would want. Now, and following up specifically from what Jody was saying, was that if you read down into the next paragraph, it discusses ways in which the examination should structurally review the budget, identify strategies where programs can be delivered more cost effectively, the cost of maintaining buildings reduced, the cost of delivering educational programming per student can be lowered, and unnecessary costs can be eliminated. Every one of those is in a school where kids are, where classrooms are. None of them are outside of that space. And that's kind of this values question that Jody's alluding to, is that, and that's my question to you, is why are, for example, this building or services and or elements of what this district does that have nothing to do with classrooms not included in this effectiveness, efficiency, and sustainability? And that's my question, is it's been asked before, and I'm going to ask it again now. I think this is a list that could be more expansive, and my question is why those items weren't added in, to saying that every possible efficient measure will be looked at, considered, and taken, not just those ones that affect classrooms. Thank you.
My assumption is that staff will look at every single thing being spent in the budget, so, yeah. David, do you have a question?
My question is just one of process. The document sets out goals, and those goals were listed in those and sort of guidelines, which sound like they are going to be what could be tested, the result could be tested by. But what I don't feel happens, and what I don't think parents see happens, is there are goals being set for equity and goals being set for all of these things, but I don't see the process actually including all of the steps to verify how successful every one of those was. So it'd be advantageous to all of us if we could all see how successful we were at achieving any of these goals. Any decision in the budget should have a goal, and then you should have a test. There should be a way to test the result of that goal. And that would just be nice if there was some way to see that.
Flavia?
So one of the ways that we are reporting on the results is the Framework for Enhancing Student Learning report. And that's where you see both what was accomplished and what the needs are going forward, and what the suggested investments are to enhance student learning in the school district.
Jennifer?
Yeah, I just have a question and a comment, and I want to acknowledge what's been shared, that there are like pieces of the budget that are within our control and then other aspects that are kind of given to us. So I respect those comments and take that into my considerate kind of role as a trustee in this process. I too am left wanting to see more connections between how our budget process has impacts on actually reducing inequities in the district, so we'll continue to look for that. My question is around the timeline. So I know we've moved from sort of the mandatory June end passing of the budget to May and then to April. I'm just wondering if you could elaborate on the implications of passing our budget that early on in the school year before we have more of an accurate read on year-end expenses.
Flavia?
So the budget is not based on financial statements, it's based on estimates looking forward, and on our estimates for enrollment and other factors. So moving the budget day later in the year is not going to result in a more accurate budget, but what implications it would have is that it will prevent us from effectively organizing our schools and executing the budget that is approved by the board. Having a budget approved by June 30th and then effective July 1 truly does not leave any room for an implementation period of that budget, and does not allow us to respect the timelines that are prescribed in our collective agreements for any changes to staffing that may need to be implemented as a result of achieving balanced budget as mandated by government.
Follow-up, Jennifer, or another question?
Yeah, thanks for that background. And yes, I think always more time is better, and I hear what you're saying about some of the other pieces. I do just want to point out as well that this timeline is similar to what we had last year, and it contradicts the policies that we passed last week. So it does concern me that we can't reflect like changes in the budget process through stakeholders or trustees because of the timeline that doesn't reflect the new policy.
Jody, you have another question?
Yes, but I'm really curious about what the new policies are that this isn't consistent with.
Jennifer, if you could speak to more detail.
Yeah, I could just share, in my view, some of the inconsistencies in the report for me with the policies passed last week are about the time required to submit motions or items, which is 4 weeks. And in our schedule here, there's 4 days total. I'm not sure how many of those are business days, but that would be in contradiction of the new policy, both for trustees to submit and stakeholders.
Flavia, maybe you could speak to the timing of trustees submitting motions to amend the financial plan.
So this financial plan engagement timeline would be board approved, and through that, it will determine a different schedule for the submission of motions to amend the draft financial plans, which would be submitted by board members following the end of the public engagement period. Stakeholders continue to have the opportunity to provide their input, like in previous years, where we have the April 8th, the Finance and Personnel Committee, where stakeholders have the opportunity to ask questions about the draft financial plan that will then inform any submissions that they may wish to make at the Committee of the Whole meeting, which is on April 13th. So this, the stakeholders will have those opportunities available to them, and whether or not they choose to register to present or ask questions is really up to individual stakeholders and rights holders.
Jody, you have another question?
I do, yeah, and I wanted to just make sure that my understanding is correct, that the board financial plan for 26-27 is April 7th, correct? That's like when it's sort of released, right? And the stakeholder meeting where we get to give feedback is the very next day. Is that correct?
Flavia?
No, the questions are April 8th. Feedback is April 13th.
So I'm just going to say I don't think that's very reasonable to expect stakeholders to review that document and come with informed and useful questions the next day. That's far too short of a timeline. I will say that I feel as a stakeholder at this meeting, like I asked a number of questions at the September meeting, and I was told that folks would get back to me with those answers, and none of them were received by my organization. And so this sort of timeline of, you know, here's the information, here's this 150-page or 350-page document, have your questions ready for tomorrow. I wouldn't do that to my students. And I don't think it's good practice, especially with transparency and equity is something that you're working towards. I also wanted to just say that I think whenever you shorten timelines, you lose conversation and you lose connection and you lose community. And while I understand that there's a real desire to have the documents created well in advance of when they're actually required, I just ask what's the human cost to trying to rush these things through, especially at that time of year. I do want to say for us, you know, you mentioned, Flavia, the examples of you know, WorkSafe and I can't remember what the other two examples were, but there's three pretty big ticket items that we don't have those numbers, and we have to sort of hold space for those until they come in. But like, where's the ability to hold space and create space for the needs of kids? So in almost every school I know, the advocacy has been for more support workers or more teachers, more resource teachers, more teacher librarian time. And at every single one of those requests, we're told, no, that's fixed. You can't have any more. And so like, when you push the timeline earlier, not only do we not have as many kids enrolled as we will later in the school year, but we'll know less about those kids that are coming in, and we'll know less about what their learning needs are. And I know that the way that schools are staffed is very to the bone. But if you're considering equity, if you're considering centering student learning, and that's what FESL is supposed to do, that's what the Ed Plan is supposed to do, the longer you wait for stakeholders to have meaningful input, and the longer you wait to find out who those actual kiddos are in our classrooms, the better that budget process will be. And I think the less likely you'll end up with really significant challenges. And so I do want to say, like, the sort of like, there's the one opportunity for questions, and then there's the meeting where we don't get to ask questions, right? And so, like, I really do feel that this process needs to be more integrated. And, you know, someone like me, this is my 26th year teaching. I remember when there was lots more consultation. I'm hoping that the board isn't still doing the secret stakeholder meetings, that there's like an opportunity for a public conversation, because I think that also helps transparency and helps to sort of identify the areas of concern. Thank you.
So I think the question was, is there an opportunity to move the date of the April 8th meeting to a further time after the budget is provided on April 7th?
The only opportunity to amend the timeline would be to have stakeholders and the public present the same night on the 15th and use the April 13th date for the Finance and Personnel Committee. That would allow more time for stakeholders to review the documents, but less time for stakeholders to prepare their submissions to the board.
Trustee Reddy? Jennifer?
Yeah, thanks. Just wondering if there's any insight on sort of like the absolute outside date. Like right now it says April 29th for the public board meeting. Would there be a possibility that if there was more time with the real budget draft from April 7th to extend that date so that there's more time to hear from stakeholders and the public with the real draft budget in hand?
Given that we don't know what our financial position is going to be next year and whether or not we're going to be in a position where we have to lay off staff, it would be my advice not to go past the April 30th board meeting beyond April 30th, which is the April 29th board meeting, which would allow us to provide appropriate notices under our collective agreements.
Okay, so if we're finished on the questions, we have a plan before us, and it has been suggested we could amend that slightly to have more time between the budget coming out and the Finance and Personnel Committee meeting. I'm not sure if, but then as Flavia said, that would be less time between the committee meeting and the committee of the whole. So I'm curious if stakeholders have any feedback on whether we should stick with the original. Maybe we could put the timeline on maybe for the people controlling the presentation, we could go back one slide. So is there, I'm curious from the stakeholders, would you rather have the suggestion was that the Finance and Personnel Committee meeting could be on the 13th, and then the public and the committee of the whole, the special delegation board meeting and the committee of the whole meeting could both be on the 15th. I'm curious if stakeholders have an opinion on which is better.
Well, again, this is being presented as a zero sum, right? And the stakeholders lose, and the compromise is on stakeholders. What I'm asking is, if this is much earlier than it needs to be done, if it doesn't need to be done April 29th, in the past we've seen it done in May and June, why can't we move this along and actually value the input of stakeholders? I appreciate that folks would like to have it done earlier, but I don't think that makes sense given the ed plan, given the equity statement, given all of your policy.
Victoria?
My understanding is because of collective agreements, we need to respect any changes that we make in our district to allow for adequate time. And Flavia, you mentioned, you made a comment earlier. Are you able to just explain a little bit more why that timeline is important to employees?
Well, it is in our collective agreements, we have very specific notice periods that need to be provided in case where we have to reorganize schools or we have to serve layoff notices to staff, and that time period, like we actually need to have decisions by the end of April so that we can follow those collective agreement provisions.
Victoria?
Is there, can you compare this date to other districts and how or in terms of, I do recall at one point having a conversation around the competitiveness around other districts and their timelines, and I don't really recall, are you able to comment on that?
Yeah, so I believe you're referring to our recruitment retention initiatives where school districts make decisions earlier and earlier so that they can either give security to their staff that they will continue to have employment with the district, or they can go out and recruit additional staff. That is required because budgets have been approved. And having the ability to provide that certainty earlier in the year gives us competitive advantage to other districts.
Carl, you had a question?
Yeah, just so I keep hearing this term, collective agreement. So for June 1st is the deadline to provide layoff notice for secondary teachers, or for all teachers, in fact. So it is well after the April budget process, well after. We, last year, even with the late passing of everything, we still managed to start our, we still met the agreement that we had made with our district staff around starting the timeline for post and fill 2 weeks earlier than we have ever done in the past. We have been able to make changes that have little to do with the budget that has led to this district being more competitive. We now actually post 2 weeks earlier than we used to. We made agreements with our employer to do that, separate from the fact that the budget process ran the way it ran last year. And so, you know, I do find it maybe a bit disingenuous to say that it's collective agreement that is pushing the deadline on here, because the only one that I'm aware of is June 1st for layoff notice, or for surplus and layoff is June 1st. So it's just for clarity. Thank you.
Just before we go on, I need to say that this meeting is scheduled to finish at 6:30, and we do have another meeting coming at 7 o'clock. So just from the logistics point of view, our last item is an information item, so I don't think we'll get to that this evening. But we do need to get to the discussion item for the National School Food Programme so that we can have input from this committee into that amount of spending. So I'm thinking that we might be able to push to like 6:40 because we do need to rearrange the room. I want everyone to be able to have their say and have a good discussion, but I'm just also aware that we have another item that we need to address today to be able to get the input. So, Carl, thank you. Jennifer, you have a question?
Yeah, so just appreciate the feedback that we're hearing about more time to consider like student needs, staffing plans, and kind of reevaluating our strategy once we have real numbers and kind of, as you said, like estimates in front of us. Is there any way we could have a week on top of the April 29th deadline that would still allow us to, and I mean, we have like, I don't think like layoffs are necessarily imminent, but even in that case, that we still have enough time to due diligence and have met the timeline?
Well, I think that's probably the discussion we'll be having at the board. I think where we're at the committee is making a recommendation to the board for a board decision. There doesn't, you know, we had the proposed plan and we haven't heard, or I haven't heard in this committee from the stakeholders a reason to change around the committee dates. There seems to be some appetite to change the final date, but we also have information around that in the way that works with collective agreement. So I think what we need to do is move on to a recommendation from this committee going to the board. And if the committee does not support the recommendation in the package, then that will be the recommendation that goes to the board and will be the discussion at the board table. So I'll look at the 4 trustees on the committee. So Alfred, are you in support of the financial planning process as described in the report? Yes. Victoria?
I am in favor. I would like to also have the discussion at the table. And I don't know if I'm happy to recommend this, and we'll have that discussion as well.
Okay. Jennifer?
Around timeline.
You're not in support? I'm in support of this recommendation and it going to the board. So it will go back to the board with the recommendation of the committee, but there will be discussion at the board. So our next item is the National School Food Program. I think we have a short presentation and then we will split into discussion groups. So I'll come back to Laura Lee Russell for the presentation.
Thank you. Next slide, please. So the Vancouver School Board is responsible for a food service program, and our Food for Schools program is specifically for schools that don't have their own cafeterias or kitchens. We have 2 commissary kitchens that provide all that food. Altogether, we're serving 67 elementary schools, 10 secondary schools, and we also have 7 contractor-run facilities. Right now, we have funding from the sources that you see on this slide, as well as we may have some funding for the Food Infrastructure Program, which is on page 3 of the report that was given for this meeting, that outlines different projects that we have submitted, and we won't know whether those projects are approved until March of 2026. And so next slide, please. So tonight we wanted to have a discussion about the National School Food Program. The district is going to have approximately $900,000 in funding, and we wanted to have discussions around how we might use that funding with this committee. And so we are everyone has on their place cards, I believe, a number, and we're going to split into 4 groups. And we have a series of 5 questions that we're going to go through and facilitate to write down some ideas that this committee might have.
So ahead of the discussion, any questions? Jennifer?
Thank you. I could ask you right now. Thanks for the overview. So I do have 2 clarifying questions about the report. One is just in the report itself, there's no mention of the VSB food framework, and just wondering, are we referencing that in our discussions or decision making about these funds? It's a pretty good guiding document.
Flavia?
So the VSB food framework is used as a guiding document when making decisions with respect to food programs in the school district. It is an aspirational document, so we definitely do not have the resources to implement the food framework, but it is a good guiding document for our work.
Okay, Jennifer?
Thank you. Yeah, that helps. So we can still use it aspirationally. And the second one was just around, is one of the goals of this work, and I know you went through the restrictions on the funds, but to provide resources to support more families to participate, so motivate people to access and participate in national school food programs?
So the goal of the grants from the federal government is to increase the number of students that access school meal. So it is not for supports outside of school, but in school supports. That's where the primary focus is.
Okay. No more clarifying questions. So what we will do is we will move into our small discussion groups and we will adjourn the meeting at 6:40. And at this point, we will end the recording because we'll be moving into the discussion groups. Right. Thank you everyone for being here this evening.